757 Spy Flight on YouTube. Welcome to the channel. Welcome if you are new. Hello, my name is Dave. I do most of the spy flights over on Twitch all the time. Every now and then I come on over to YouTube to do a full, complete cold and dark flight is what we like to call them here in the flight simulator community. And it seems to me over the past week, more people came into chat saying, hey, I just got the new ATR. Would you do a video? So we're going to be doing an ATR video today. And as you saw from the beginning, we are at Fort Lauderdale. This is a great place to go and do an ATR flight because a real-world airline actually departs from here, from Fort Lauderdale, and it goes to really cool places. Places with palm trees and beaches and oceans and stuff like that. So our flight today is going to mirror a real-world flight. We are departing from Fort Lauderdale and we're heading on over to the Bimini Airport. Now this is going to be an unusual one because we don't have charts or approaches and stuff like that. So what do you do if you go to a place that doesn't have an ILS or even a ground chart? How do we do that? We're departing off of runway 10 left here. We got a couple of waypoints here and there, landing on runway 28. Flight level 70. We're just going to 7,000 feet. It's only a 50-minute flight. Our distance is only 70 miles, but yes, indeed, they actually really do fly this route, and they do several times a week too, as Silver Airways Flight 145. So this is the ATR. It is a small prop liner. I like to call this a small airplane with deep systems. There is deep system simulation in this airplane, meaning that if you want to learn a lot about this airplane, this is one of those airplanes that you can do that with. This is also going to be, as I said, mirroring a real-world flight. This would be Silver Airways Flight 145. Add-ons, I use Navigraph, SimBrief, and Volanta. We can use GSX. We can use Pushback Helper. Those are the add-ons that I normally use for a flight like this. The airplane has been recently updated. That's good news. And they still do an update every now and then to make it an even cooler little airplane. Like I said, I call it a big, small airplane. It's a little prop liner, but there is an awful lot that they put into this one. And again, I'm also mirroring a real-world flight, and I've got real-world weather and real-time set up in the simulator. So what should you do? If this is your first time here joining me over on YouTube and you want to learn about this airplane, the thing to do is, with a cold and dark flight, fly along with me. That's what the whole idea is. I try and do every button push as slowly as I can so that you have an opportunity to push the same buttons and learn how the airplane works. So the cool thing about YouTube is you can stop, restart, rewind the video, and that way if I did something fast, you can go back and look at it again. I also like to suggest that after a few days or so, take the airplane back out, do your own hometown flight. Fly out of your own hometown airport. Just kind of helps you remember all the cool things that you might hopefully are going to pick up from the video here today. And then if you feel like it, join us over on Twitch for the spy flights. We're live most every day of the week. Monday's the day that I take off and I come over here on YouTube. So come on over and fly with us over there. Everything is a group flight and you are definitely welcome for sure. So here we are at Fort Lauderdale. And the airplane is just over the highway there. But one of the things that I mentioned that we have is no approach charts for the runway that we're going. So the first thing to do is take a quick look at our plan for today. And here is Fort Lauderdale. And you can kind of see we got a couple of waypoints. There is a waypoint called BEECH. And so after takeoff, we'll fly to BEECH. Our airplane right now is over here at gate Alpha 5. I think that's where Silver Airways parks. And then we're going to be taking off. So basically, we'll do a little taxi here to 10 left and then head right out over the water. And as you can see from here in my charts, we don't have anything left. There's no more charts to go and do. So what are we going to do here? Well, after takeoff, we're going to fly to BEECH. And then we're going to turn south. And we're going to go to another VOR, the ZBV VOR. And as you can see, as we zoom in closer and closer, all of a sudden the airport starts to show up. So when we get about 5 miles or so from this VOR, we'll break off from the LNAV flight plan, and we'll basically go on a heading of 100 degrees, 100 degrees. That's going to make us set us up for a very nice downwind. And then we'll go ahead and come on out here for probably 10 to 15 miles or so. Maybe a little bit less. It's prop liner. It's not a jet. So how about 10 miles? And then we'll head 180 degrees due south. And that's going to be our base leg. And then we'll look over our shoulder and see if we can see the island, if we can see the runway, turn into a heading of 280 degrees, and do a descent and landing. This is a sea level airport, so let's call our traffic pattern altitude. When it's time for us to do our descent, we'll start an initial descent to 2,000 and then go down to 1,500. By then we should see the runway and we'll be able to do a decent landing. I hope. Best laid plans and all that stuff. Okay, so that's what we have for all the data here today. One of the things that you've probably seen, if you've seen the spy flight, especially if we're over on VATSIM, is I've got a little thing that I call the flight strip. And this is just a notepad of information. And if you look in the description below, you're going to see that I've copied and pasted this information down there. So you can copy and paste it into Notepad and then change it up any way you want. This is how I copy clearances, know what departure gates I'm supposed to use. And this is basically how it is that I do note taking. It's also how I remember how to pronounce city names that I always mess up, like Edinburgh and stuff like that. So anyway, that is one of the things that I use the notepad for. So are we ready to go? It's real simple. Go ahead, and if you're going to fly along, now's the time to hit pause, start up your flight sim, put your airplane at the gate, and then start the video again. One thing is if you are going to fly with me, the thing about the video here is it's recorded. So that means the weather that you're flying with might be a little bit different from mine. If that's the case and you want to use the same runways, just use basic a few clouds weather settings. Otherwise, you might have the wind kind of whistling down the runway in the opposite direction and you might have some trouble. Okay, so here we all are at Fort Lauderdale. I am currently in what we all call the drone cam or the showcase or whatever is that I think they call it. And this one, I've actually got an Xbox controller. So as we can go ahead and we can kind of fly by the palm tree here. And this is a freeware scenery, I believe. I think this was a freeware. And if we look down here, there is our concourse. And there is our airplane. The Silver Airways, this is the ATR. I'm flying the shorter version of the ATR, which is what they actually fly on the route that we're about to do. Now, you can take the longer one. You can take that one too. The one thing I will suggest when you do take the longer ATR, please, please, please remember that the longer airplane is more susceptible to tail strikes because there's more tail back there. So be sure and go ahead and don't pull back on the stick. It's not a jetliner and you will drag the tail on the runway. Okay, so here we are here. Passengers, you actually board through the back of the airplane over here. Doors are closed right now. No way to open doors from the outside. I think that some airplanes let you set up a key combination on your joystick or something for doors. I haven't jumped into that, but that's something to learn. So the next thing to do is let's go ahead and go on into the airplane. And our first stop is going to be the iPad. Pilots call these things the EFB. And they use lots of little initials for everything. I mean, they probably have one for the flushing button on the toilet. But I will try and decode as many of those for you as I can. EFB stands for Electronic Flight Bag, and this is where all the pilots' documents. Remember, in the old days, pilots had a big old briefcase. Well, it was full of paper charts and everything. Now they have an iPad. So it's the Electronic Flight Bag. And the first thing that you can do is if you did your flight planning with SimBrief, then you could log in using your SimBrief ID, which I've already done, and then you can go and hit import the OFP. And like magic, there is our flight plan. And what's also nice is we also have METAR data. Now, there isn't METAR data for where we're going, but we're not going that far. So the METAR data for Fort Lauderdale, the weather is going to be just fine. You could, if you want, set the flight plan into the flight management computer. I generally don't do that. And it's not that I'm trying to make extra work for myself or anything, but the reason is all of these flight management computers are different. And if you're flying in a big VATSIM event and you all of a sudden are being told to go direct to a waypoint that isn't in your flight plan, which will happen on occasion, not often, but it will, knowing how to program your flight management computer is important. Since I'm flying all sorts of different airplanes, it's easy to forget. So this is also sort of a little reminder. So I don't usually import a lot of flight plans. One exception is big long flights like cross the pond or cross the land. At that point in time, you can bet I'll download the flight plan because that's just way too much busy work. What I will do with this airplane is I'm going to hit set fuel and I'm going to hit set payload. And at that point in time, you can just go ahead and start setting up your airplane, fly away. You don't have to do anything else. I do just a couple more things for a little bit of airplane immersion and stuff. One of the first things I'm going to do is go over to options. And you have to slide this a little bit here and hit that little triangle, slide it back, and the PFD throttle hint I turn off. What the PFD throttle does is it basically goes and it puts a little bit of extra information over here on the primary flight display about the position of where your throttle is. I know where my throttles are. I don't need it. And so I go and I turn it off. It's annoying. And we come back here, and I wish there was a way for me to actually save these things in here, but I can't do that. Now then, important safety tip for you. Over here on options, if you're just getting to know this airplane, see this thing here that says to display click spot help? This is something that I think you should blow up to full screen, take a screen grab of, and put it over on another monitor or something. That way you can refer back to all the little hot spots on each of the monitors here, and that's going to show you where it is that you can click. You'll see me using a few of these, and it's pretty good. There's some that I don't bother using at all, but just go and grab yourself a screen grab of it, save it to your desktop for a while until you don't need it, because you'll find that helpful. Okay, next thing that we can do is for a little immersion, we can go to the aircraft, and I already have wheel chocks in place. Let's go to ground power. We need a ground power card. I'm also going to open the main passenger door and the big old cargo door. And then if you go outside, you can see the cargo door is open, the passenger door is open. Yes, the cargo area is between the passenger cabin and the cockpit. So that's a little unusual. They don't put it underneath the seats, underneath the floor of the cabin. Okay, and with that, guess what? We're done. Everything's set and ready to go. I do have my flight plan in PDF form, and I usually, when I do my flight plans, I save a copy of my PDF flight plan to the desktop. If you're looking, you're seeing there's 24 pages to this. You don't need all 24 pages. Don't let that scare you. I usually use the first 3 or 4. So we've got the flight plan all set and ready to go too. And now is the time when we get to go and start doing the things that flight simulator pilots really like to do, and that's flipping switches and pushing buttons and all that other stuff. The first thing we'll do is, just like the real pilots, I'm going to make sure that my condition levers are in the right spot. I'm going to make sure the flap lever is down. I'm going to make sure that my throttles are, okay, I kind of need to go and make sure my throttles are down. I'm going to look up here and make sure that the landing gear lever is down, and I'm going to make sure that the parking brake is down too, is engaged. So just like the real pilots, they'll do that too. And once you've gone and done those few checks, so you can come up here. You might also have noticed that I moved my controllers around a little bit. I didn't move the stick around because there's a control lock. You can see that the rudder pedals are moving down there. There's a gust lock right here, and that's why we couldn't do that. But I also just go ahead and make sure that my USBs controllers are actually connected. Sometimes, you know, in computers, they get disconnected. Next step, it's time to turn power on the airplane, and we're going to go ahead and flip the on switch. If you tilt up a little bit as you turn it on, you'll see the lights flash here on the MFC, multifunction computer. You'll also notice that the backup landing gear indicator lights go on. You'll see that there are unlocked indicators showing that the cabin and cargo doors are unlocked, so they're not closed. You could also do a quick test of the cabin, the switch test, to make sure that's good, and everything else is looking good. We're going to turn on the navigation lights. Those are the lights on the wingtips of the airplane and on the tail of the airplane. Lets everybody know if they're walking around an airplane that there's some idiot up front, could be pushing buttons and that. Now we'll also turn on external power, and then look down here and you'll see, oh, all of a sudden the airplane has turned on. While the monitors and computer systems are doing their tests, I usually come all the way down here, and there are a couple of lights that I'll adjust. This is going to be the control panel, the pedestal. I'm going to backlight the instruments so that I can read the labels easier. I'm going to do the same thing with the overhead, and I'll go and do one click of floodlight, especially if it's going to be a late at night kind of a flight or a sunrise or sunset flight, because things get dark in flight sim awfully quick. As you're starting up, just like any old airplane, the caution light's going to be doing nothing but flashing at you. It's irritating, but just turn it off, and that's all you've got to do. And now all of our monitors are pretty well set. Technically, at this point, as I mentioned, the airplane is loaded. You don't have to do any of the things that you saw me do, except turn power on the airplane, of course. So the last thing that I'll do here is I'll come up here and I'm going to arm the emergency exit lights. I've already turned on my nav lights. And then one of the things that you do is you turn off some of the white lights. And we're going to start off with the windshield heaters. They're going to turn those on. And we're going to turn on the oxygen. The hydraulic lights are already on. We're not going to turn on the probe heaters. Those are the little things sticking out of the front of the airplane. They get really, really hot. You could burn them out in the hot sun. Also, ground crew might get burned. You don't want to do that. And as you can see, we have another caution light. We'll just turn that off. Next thing we'll do is go ahead and start our initial programming of the McDo. And usually for this, for programming, I might go over here and kind of zoom in a little bit, because there's going to be things we'll do. So we'll go forward and we can tilt down just a touch, make it as full screen as you possibly can, and here we go. And we're going to use FMS1, and you could also check, this could be a great time to check your navigation data. Our nav data is good. Let's go to the init page. And the way that I've seen, there's a real-world captain and flight instructor that flies ATRs and is doing an incredibly good series of videos. I'll try to remember to put a link in. It's Fly with Magnar. Magnar, I believe, starts with the wait page. So we're going to hit the wait button. There's two ways to do this. The fast way is take the zero fuel weight button and hold it down. And after the numbers pop in, you can release it. And my current zero fuel weight, according to the flight plan, was supposed to be 15,348. Okay, it says 15,472. Close enough, right? This is maybe somebody brought an extra suitcase or something. The next thing we're going to do is the same thing with fuel on board. So hit the FOB button, hold it down, and now all of a sudden 1204. You can check your flight plan, and it says 1240. That was a little bit different too. It's close enough, but it's something important to check. This is what's actually aboard the airplane that we've boarded, so I care about those numbers as opposed to the flight plan. The last thing you'll need is the reserves, and that's down here at the bottom. Final reserve and alternate fuel is 624. So we put in 624, 624, and that's your reserves. Okay, done with that page. Return. Next thing we're going to do, and this seemed a little bit counterintuitive to me, but this is the way Magnar does it, so I'm going to call that's the right way to do this. So we're going to do the performance initialization. You may need, if you're flying on VATSIM, to wait and get your clearance. Make sure that you did get your cruise altitude first, and our cruise altitude for this flight is 7,000 feet. So not climbing up into the stratosphere here. Over here on page number 2, you'll also see your alternate here is MYGF. So, or you can come over here, the top of page 2. This would actually be your flight plan to go to your alternate and also your altitude to go to the alternate. So we are going to my girlfriend. I'm sure that MYGF. Yeah, I'm sure that joke has already been done 1,000 times. MYGF, and we're going to go at 11,000 feet if we have to go to our alternate. Now, when you go and put this in, you see it's in yellow here. When I'm going to put it in the alternate cruise, I'm going to push the button, and you might notice that my girlfriend, MYGF, didn't show up immediately. Sometimes it might take up to 10, 15, 20 seconds. Just click it once. It has to look up some of these things and takes a little bit of time. Guess what? Performance initialization is done. Let's return. And now we're going to do our flight plan initialization. 2 routes. We're going to use the main route here. And our departure airport is K and Fort Lauderdale, KFLL. KFLL. We're going to do the / and then we are going to Bimini. Bimini is MYBS. So instead of my girlfriend, it's my bull. That's probably a joke that has been done too. Okay, so we got that one. If you want to, you could also put your flight number in. So we are Silver Airways, and our silver flight today is 145, which is the real silver flight that takes you over to Bimini. After that, you can go ahead and you can execute. This would have also been a place that you could have imported the route. Again, I want to put it in manually to remind myself how to put in waypoints and stuff should VATSIM ATC tell me to go someplace that isn't on the flight plan. Yeah, usually they tell me to go to one of those places with words that we're not supposed to say on the internet. Okay, so our departure runway is going to be runway 10 left. So runway 10 left. We're not doing any departures. If SimBrief does not give you a departure, there are some departures that you'll find in the list of all of the departures. So if we come on over here to airports real fast and come on into FLL and go to charts and do SIDS, you'll see that there's all of these departures. But usually there's one that's named after the airport, like the O'Hare departure or the Logan, the Boston departure. In this case, there is the Fort Lauderdale one departure. So if your SimBrief flight plan did not include one of those SIDs, but you do happen to notice that there is something like the Fort Lauderdale departure, go ahead and put that in your pin board down here, because chances are your clearance will include, if it didn't include any of the others, the ATC people are going to give you, put you on the Fort Lauderdale departure. We're not going to worry about it right now, with the exception of on the Fort Lauderdale departure, prop liners are up to 2,000 feet. So we'll do that. And if we come in here, I think you'll even see, do I have the Fort Lauderdale departure? There is Phil and Frisbee. It actually isn't in here. It doesn't look like in the SIDS. But anyhow, that is a good thing to just have in the back of your mind. We're not going to do a departure. We're going to go and just execute that. After our departure off of runway 10 left, our first waypoint is BEECH, B-E-E-C-H, B-E-E-C-H. I say it out loud. It helps me put in the right one. Now then, after we go to BEECH, we're actually going to be on an airway. And the way that you do airways in this is, of course, different than an Airbus or a Boeing. what you do is click Beach, and you see where it says Airway, click Airway. And we have the BR55 Victor Airway. It's the only one, but there you go. And then instead of putting in the out point of the airway, just click it, and it gives you a list. It wants you to choose the list here. If you try and put your own in, it gets cranky with you. And we are going to the ZBV VOR. ZBV, and that's it. Execute. And there's the flight plan. So that's all that there was to it. The next thing we could go ahead and do is go to MYBS. Uh-oh, no runways. Whatever are we going to do? Well, this is going to be that thing. So we've been able to go and look at the map, at the chart here through Navigraph, and we were able to go and see, remember when we were down here? So we're not going to worry about it. It's a sunny, beautiful day in the neighborhood, no problems. But there isn't a runway to put in, but don't worry, we can still fly the flight. And there we go. Our flight plan is done. Now, at this point in the flight, usually after I put this into the flight plan, it's time to go into hotel mode. And that's kind of one of the unusual things about the airplane. Most of the big jets, the Airbuses, the Boeings, in the tail of the airplane is a small jet engine called the APU, Auxiliary Power Unit. This airplane does not have an APU. Currently, you can see over here we have a ground power cart. So the ground power cart is plugged into the airplane. That's where the power is coming from. Well, what we need to do is we need to get off the ground power cart. And so what they've done is, instead of doing the extra weight of putting an APU in the tail, engine number 2 here, that is actually got a cool thing in it called the prop brake. And the propeller brake is right up here, and you can see it's all off. To engage the prop brake, you need a little bit of hydraulic power. Well, the hydraulics are off too. So to tell the ground crew that we're about to start an engine, but we're not going to start spinning propellers around, we're going to turn on the wing lights. And the wing lights let them know, oh, an engine might be starting. We're going to keep a close eye in case the pilot didn't get the prop brake on, that kind of deal. And then what we're going to do is, underneath by the throttle, there is the aux pump, hydraulic auxiliary pump, Kind only, ground control only. We're going to press it, and for 30 seconds we have hydraulic pressure. And you can see, it says ready. So we're going to engage the prop brake. Not easy to say 3 times fast. And with that, when it turns turquoise, you can go ahead and guard it. And the prop brake is now engaged. As a courtesy, you might actually have the co-pilot look out the window and just say, hey, is there anybody milling around by the propeller, just in case there's a problem? So, we don't want to carve up anybody on the ground. But now we can go and start turning on the airplane or that engine. And to do that, we need fuel pump. And we're going to go to the engine starter, and there's start A and B, start A and start B. First start of the day on the ATRs, you do both A and B, and we'll start engine 2. As you look down here, you're going to see the this airplane's NH5 go up when it's 10%. Look down here, and you're going to click the condition lever from fuel shut off to feather. And if you go outside, you'll hear this engine starting up here a bit, which is a good opportunity to enjoy a sip of morning coffee. If you look carefully, you'll also see sort of a heat plume coming out of the back of the engine. And this engine is now on. Prop's not spinning, but the engine's on, so that means that we have electrical power in here. And what we'll do is, the engine started, so we can come up here and we're going to turn the starter off. And now we're going to go and disconnect ground power. If you've done everything right, and really, I think I have, so you should be good. So just turn off external power. DC generator 2 light should go out. It did. And so now we can come down here and we can disconnect ground power. This is also when I usually close the cargo door. I'm also going to come down here and open the mailbox. This is a small little hatch right outside the pilot. It's kind of hard to see. You can see there it is. That's so the ground crew can hand you any final documents, your load sheet. You know, they might try and stuff some pizza through there, but we're going to go ahead and do that. And now we can finish up the McDo and set up a few more things. So let's look down here. And this looks really good. So now we're going to do performance. Final performance. The only thing you might need to do on this one is your transition altitude. It's 18,000 feet. We're good to go there. Next page, you need your mean winds. Another word for mean winds would also be average winds. And that's going to be on page 1 if you're using the standard LIDO style of flight plan like I am. And that's going to be your average winds right here. And our average wind for the flight is going to be 114 degrees at 1 knot. So we care about that 1 knot, don't we? 114 degrees /01, and there's mean winds. Because this is a short flight, I am also going to go ahead and start setting up some of the arrivals. No runways or anything. 18,000 feet is pretty good. The QNH, that is going to be over here on flight plan. And we're going to have to use the Fort Lauderdale altimeter because there's nothing for MYBS. So the altimeter is 2999. So we'll come over here and we're going to set this in here of 2999, 29.9099. Oh, not an 8, 0.99. We're going to plug that in now. The winds here at Fort Lauderdale about as close as we're going to get to Bimini, and the winds right now are 360 at 3. So we're going to come over here and we're going to do this one. I've zoomed in because this is an unusual airplane. So 360 at 03, but do another slash and a 0 because this thing also takes into account wind gusts. Okay? So there's our wind gusts too. And all that's good. It's going to be a full flaps landing back over here. And we got all that done too. Let's also go and set our altimeter in the airplane. So that's right there. Baro set 2999. We're also, this is when I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my speed to auto for takeoff. And right now, if you look, you see on the speed tape here, it's turquoise and 126. I'm going to hit the button and you see we turned it pink. So we got that taken care of. Now let's go ahead and set a couple more things. We do know that our initial climb, according to the Fort Lauderdale departure, is 2,000 feet. So 2,000 feet, I'm going to go ahead and put that into the autopilot. And it's a real small number. It's very hard to see, but it's right there on top of the altitude tape, 2,000. The next thing I'm going to do is do my departure heading. Our departure heading today is going to be 096. Very convenient. So our heading here is going to be 096 degrees. And again, another small number. This is right below the artificial horizon. There's your heading, 096 degrees. And all of that is good to go. And I think we're ready to go and start doing a few more things like welcome our passengers aboard and get ready to go. This airplane does have its own electronic checklists, which is really nice. It's very easy to use. Remember all those click spots I told you? Yeah, this is why you want to have those when you're just getting started with this airplane. And you can even see our pending checklist is the final cockpit preparation. There's actually 2 of them. And so the first one, I click the bottom part over here. That's how you advance through. That's what I call the copyrights. So, okay, we did the copyrights. Yeah. And so that procedure is complete. And now we're going to do the actual checklist. Parking brake is engaged. Altimeters are set. Landing elevation. If you've gone and entered your arrival airport in the flight management computer, the landing elevation should be green dashes. It should be blue, and it's automatically entered. FMS, comms, and nav. Well, we've set up the comms pretty good. The FMS. Comms, if we were on VATSIM, we would be tuning in the radio. We could also set up our squawk code, which is down here, and that's surveillance. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to do 2000 as our squawk code and enter. This is how you tune your radios on this airplane. So we got those. I'm going to go to the nav page, and I'm going to go to the ND overlay. I'm going to turn off the weather layer. I'm going to turn on nav aids and airports, and I'm going to leave my TCAS traffic to above. And so that's good. You could also go to comms, and you could type in 122.800, not 888. Uh-oh, VHF frequency, I messed up. 122.800, and enter. Oh, well, I did that in VHF too. Let's do it over here. 122, whoops. Not doing well. 122.800, and enter. One of the reasons I'm not doing well is this is a little bit of an awkward panel. The click zones aren't perfect. And we'll make 122.8 our active frequency. Boy, we're doing really good. I'm going to go back to nav. ND overlay, everything's good. We'll go to surveillance, and we're ready to go and start squawking mode Charlie on the taxiways. So at that point in time, you could basically say FMS, comms, and navs are set. Next thing to do is fuel quantity and fuel on board. So you've got a fuel totalizer right here. It says 1200, 1200 kgs. If you come over here, it does want you to reset your fuel used. Oh, I went one too fast. I skipped something here. Sorry about that. I did skip the fuel quantity. The whole point of fuel quantity and stuff like that is the fuel on board that you see underneath the engine instruments, that is not an actual totalizer. And sometimes that number is off. Don't let it throw you. You're probably just going to be fine. I know, being fine is not enough, but we're trying to get going here. Next step is engine fuel used, hit reset. If you have icing conditions, check the box and then confirm your takeoff data. And if you look up here, all of our takeoff data has turned green. Fuel on board, reserves, gross rate, takeoff center of gravity, and takeoff trim says 1.3 up. And there is your trim setting right there. And elevator trim is something good to have on your flight stick. So there is up 1.3. Now, another YouTuber, B737NG driver, says this number is a little bit off in the sim, and you should subtract 3 on your trim setting for takeoff on this airplane. On the longer airplane, I actually subtract 4 on my trim setting. Okay, so we've set our trim. So engine fuel used is good. Memo panel, right now the memo panel's got a bunch of stuff on it, but nothing looks unusual, so we'll leave that there. And our power management is set to takeoff, and that checklist is done. Okay, we are ready to go. The ground crew just handed us our final load sheet. So thank you, ground crew. We're going to close the mailbox and close the document door. We can go to the aircraft itself. And we're going to go ahead and close the main door. And there goes our main door closing. I know my parking brakes are on. There's the parking brake lever. We're going to start spinning props around. Let's get rid of the chocks. And all of that is good too. At this point, you could go ahead and set up your pushback. There's several ways to do a pushback. You can use GSX, which is really cool and got all sorts of cool things. I'm going to turn GSX off though. And we're going to use something called Pushback Helper. And here is the Pushback Helper interface. It's free at flightsim.to. It is a great thing to have, especially if GSX is being cranky and you're on a VATSIM event and you got to push back right now. It really is. So let's go ahead and we're going to call the tug. Here comes the tug. And you can see our tug is coming in out from outside. And actually, it's a sled on this case. Pushback helper is usually pretty good about getting the correct piece of equipment, which is good too. And what this thing's going to do is go and pick up the nose wheel, and then our pushback truck driver will just push us back. So usually what happens is as they're setting it up, you'll notice all of a sudden he kind of jerks a little bit. Come on. You see it kind of fidgeted a bit? That means they're connected. So we'll come down here. We're going to go ahead and turn off the parking brakes. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to turn on my beacon. Probably ought to do seatbelts and devices. Keep the passengers in their seats so they're not roaming around. And now we're ready to go. And let's reverse. And back we go. Another thing I like about Pushback Helper is you can be inside the airplane, outside the airplane. You can be back in the lavatory, and you can still control this. So we're just going to do a straight, gentle little pushback here beyond the crew line. You could also spin the airplane a little bit to the right. And so that'll turn you out to the right a little bit. That's nice too. Generally, I do a straight pushback at most of the crowded airports just because, you know, it's crowded. You can see it also does not turn on a dime here. And now we're going to go and straighten out the nose wheel and stop. That's probably really good right about there. We'll come back in the airplane, and we're going to go ahead and turn on the brakes. I'm going to come and release the tug. I will wait until I see the tug driver driving away. If they're driving away, that means it's good. I'm going to turn it off, and there's our pushback. Really simple and really nice. Okay, let's come on down here. And we've got another checklist. So let's see, what do we have? We have CDLs if installed. Cockpit door locking system. If you want to jump into that rabbit hole, the CDL is behind the co-pilot. The cockpit door locking system is on. Okay, so the CDLs are set. FMS and takeoff data is confirmed. We did that. Trim. We've set the trim. Doors are closed. Seatbelts on. Beacons on. The before propeller rotation checklist is done. And we can go and start rotating the prop. And so that's basically the engine that's in hotel mode. So we're going to come down here. Well, we could look up here first and see the prop brake remains on, but the ready light is out. So you need to come down here and give yourself 30 seconds of hydraulic power. Press the button. Come on up here. The button is lit, so we're going to go ahead and turn it off, and it's going to flash a little bit. It's going to say unlocked. The turquoise prop brake will go out, and then you can reguard it. And then if you look outside the airplane, you can see, oh my gosh, we've got a propeller spinning. And at that point in time, you can come down here, and this condition lever, you can run that condition lever up to auto. And if you watch outside, you're going to notice the propeller spins a little bit faster. And while that's going on, we can start engine number 1. So up on the upper panel, fuel pump is on. Starter system goes to A and B. Starting engine number 1. Looking down here, you can see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. At 10, you're going to go ahead and you're going to move condition lever 1 from fuel shutoff to feather. And if you go outside, you'll see that propeller starts spinning a little bit too as we start up engine number 1. Let this thing start to spin up a little bit too, and you can be like a real pilot, and you should monitor the engine instruments, in particular the oil, to make sure that, you know, the oil pressure is up on both. If the oil pressure all of a sudden drops, that means you have an oil leak and you're not flying that day. And then once you go ahead and see that, you can say, okay, let's go ahead, and we're going to take the condition lever for engine number 1 up to auto. And if you go outside, you'll see that that propeller starts spinning a little bit faster too. The sounds on the airplane are pretty good. I actually like them. And now we have the before taxi checklist. FWS. Okay, so that's all the memos here. The FWS button is right down here. Hit recall. And then if you look up here, A-ICE Alpha. So the anti-icing is not on for the probe heaters. Let's turn those on. Checklists are our friend. Okay, so we got those. So now the FWS is recalled and clear, and that's good. Cockpit comm hatch, it's closed. Condition levers 1 and 2 are set to auto. Anti-ice, we don't need anti-icing. We're in Florida. True, this is a an automated hydraulic system, and it's up here by the power switch. And all you have to do is unguard it and turn it on. It will reguard itself, and the True is now on. While you're up there, if you're like me, I'm always forgetting my engine start switch. After start, we need to turn it to off. Okay, so the hydraulic True is now on. Anti-skid test. The anti-skid test is over here above the landing gear. Press it. It's going to beep at you. You're going to see a skid test, fail, 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 fail. And then it turns green and says N, 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 N. I'm going to assume that that's normal, not abnormal, and you're in good shape. So the anti-skid test is done. Flaps, and flaps go down 1 click on this airplane, and your flap indicator's there for 15. Nose wheel steering is on. If you can't find the nose wheel steering, it's right down there. There is your nose wheel steering. It's almost always on and guarded. And NWS is good, and that procedure is great. Guess what? It is finally taxi time. One of the things that I really like about Navigraph right now is they gave us these incredibly awesome charts here. And it's with your moving map. And you can see here we are. There's gate Alpha 5. We push back from there. So we're going to come out via Tango, and we'll take Tango out to the runway. And this will be a moving map, which is outstanding. Okay, so we're going to come up here. I'm going to turn on the taxi light. We do not need the wing light anymore. Beacon and nav remain on. I'm going to do a cabin call. Let the cabin crew know that we are getting ready to start moving the airplane about. We'll come down here. I usually will go and tap my toe brakes a few times, and I'll turn off the parking brake and then hold the toe brake. Sometimes the airplane starts moving, and so toe brakes are on, and oh my gosh, a taxi checklist. Taxi and takeoff light is on, brake check. So we'll release the brakes and see if the airplane starts moving forward. We'll get on the line here, and there we go. Just barely moving my throttles to get us going. And we'll get lined up on that center taxi line, and then do your brake check. There is the brake check, and we've done that. Brake check is good. Flight guidance. Oh my gosh, we haven't done that. That's okay. Let's go ahead and taxi. We'll get going on the taxi, and then from there we can kind of set that up as we go. It's just a couple of buttons. So again, just a touch of my throttles. I hardly move them. And then out we go. There is the Tango taxiway. So this would be our last Tango in Fort Lauderdale, I guess. And there's your first dumb joke of the day. Maybe not. If you're new to this world of flight sim, one of the things that you're going to find is there are all sorts of things to spend money on. Like this airplane is a payware airplane. It's definitely not one of the most expensive, and actually pretty nice. But there's the other thing that you can do to spend money is you can go and get airplanes and airports. This is a nice little payware airport, and I do suggest, you know, you kind of keep an eye out for the ones that you like. The default airports, some of them are really nice. And so before spending your money, just go check out the default. Because again, not all of them are really all that bad. There are also a lot of freeware airports at flightsim.to. In fact, the airport we're going to is a freeware airport. So we're doing a nice little taxi here. I'm going to tap the brakes, slow us down a bit. Let's do flight guidance or the autopilot. First thing I'm going to do is arm my heading hold. We're going to basically go straight to beach, so I'm going to arm nav mode. And if you look, heading select is green, LNAV is blue, that means it's armed. I'm going to hit the IAS climb button once, and then a second time to take it out of IAS mode and have it go into pitch mode. And that's going to be a pitch hold as we take off. And so now basically flight guidance is set. Takeoff config test. So to do takeoff config, the first thing I'm going to do is reach down here and I'm going to turn off the control lock. I'm going to move my control forward, back, right, left, and just make sure that it's happy. And then after that, I'm going to hit the takeoff config button, which is under flaps. You'll look under here, underneath, right above the flap indicator, it will turn green, and that should be good. And that's your takeoff config checklist. And that checklist is done. Procedure complete. Oh, we've got another procedure, the before takeoff checklist. Yep, this airplane has a lot of them, but I've generally found if you run through them, you don't forget anything. So another light tap on the brakes to slow us down just a bit. And takeoff briefing has been done, but not very good. The gust lock is off. Flight controls were checked. Transponder and TCAS. Did I turn on the transponder or TCAS surveillance? No, I didn't. Oh, we are not squawking mode Charlie on taxiways. Why is that important? Okay, so if you're on VATSIM, the rule in the real world is there's a time to turn on your transponder and squawk mode Charlie. In VATSIM, you do it a lot sooner. That's how the VATSIM controllers control you or keep an eye on you. So, you know, you squawk mode Charlie on taxiways. That's what that's all about. We're not on VATSIM, but I always try to do that. Airflow. Our airflow is going to be normal. I haven't changed it once. The cabin crew has been kept completely in the dark about today's flight. The engine bleeds are going to be normal. The external lights are normal. And now we've got something called the flight director, lateral flight director bar. Holy cats. Okay, that's this up and down green thing here on the artificial horizon. You can see it's kind of pointing over to leaning towards the runway. It's not centered. This thing will center itself when we get lined up on the runway. That's what that's all about. And then there is another thing down here. It's the rudder cam. This is actually a relatively complex system. I just looked to see, is my rudder centered? It is, and that's it. That's all you have to worry about as you're getting started. Basically, the thing about this airplane is the big old rudder back there, it flaps a little bit. It flaps. So there's a series of springs and stuff back there in the real airplane to keep it from flapping about. But you have to turn it on and turn it off on occasion. It's mostly automatic in this plane, and I don't think an awful lot of that is modeled, but that's what that one was there for. And our takeoff checklist is done. We're approaching our runway. I'm going to do a cabin call, flight attendant seats for takeoff. Everything else looks like it's good to go up there. Now I'm going to kind of look up and down. White lights are all out. So lights that are out, that's a good thing. Looks like we've got a United 737 over there. There is some airports will have some static airplanes parked away from the gates to make it look a little bit better. I think that's kind of nice. We have another Silver Airways ATR hanging out with United. And all is right with the world. I'm going to gently push my brakes, slow us down a bit more. And now I'm going to use some of those click spots, and I'm going to get my maps on the navigation display set up. And so I basically have those set up now. What I did is there's 3 map modes. I turned it to sort of the half-size map so that it shows everything up ahead and to the side. I zoomed it in, zoomed it out just a little bit, and that's all I did. You can also go back and do engine monitoring. You can monitor aircraft data. There's another ground chart. I don't really use that one at all because I have a really nice moving map with Navigraph. And so that works for me too. And we're almost here. I've gotten off my center line. Let's be a little more pro. Get on the center line. There we go. There's a little more of a pro taxi. Again, I like to call this a little deep plane. There is a lot to this airplane. And there's so many little systems that you can dive into and learn about. I think I'm really just scratching the surface with this. But it's great for small little flights like the one that we're going on today. And it really is, I mean, the best time that I usually have. Almost flying time. Now is a great time to have a sip of your coffee. Over on Twitch, we have a few things that viewers can suggest that the live streamer do. Things like hydrate, stretch, do your posture check. Now's a great time to do those things before we take off, because there's going to get to be a time that you're just not going to be able to take your hands off the controls. So a sip of your coffee, make sure you're sitting up straight. You can, put your feet on your rudder pedals if you have them, and reach all of your controllers. And we'll come on around here. There is the ILS hold. If there were airplanes on ILS approaches, you'd be holding there as opposed to the main hold short line, which is up here. You notice that the yellow line on the taxiway changed a little bit. Now it's black and yellow. That would be a good indicator to switch over to control tower. And we're clear to go. I usually will, like the real pilots, you're going to look and see, even if you're cleared to go, is there an airplane on final? You don't want to, they might have forgotten something. I'm going to do strobes, turn those on, and out we go. I don't usually taxi very fast. Real airplanes, if you remember, this is kind of what it looks like when you're sitting in a passenger seat and it's time to line up and wait on the runway. Just, take your time on a taxi. I do have the hat switch set up so that I can look right and left. In my set of controllers, I don't have an awful lot of options. So my up and down is actually my trim controls. But I can look right and left. And there we go. So this would essentially be line up and wait. We can go and do landing lights, and we're all set and ready to go. At this point in time, we're waiting for the tower to tell us to go, and the tower just said go. So for this airplane, there's a little thing on this airplane called the notch, and it's over here. So you can see my throttles right here, and you see the little pointer here, and you see the little white zone here at about 65%. That's the notch. So that's basically like automatic pitch control and all for you. So basically, I've set up my Airbus style controllers from Thrustmaster. I've calibrated them so that when I go to basically the auto throttle, main auto throttle, I think it's CL. When I go to that, that's also the notch here on this airplane. So all I have to do is release the brakes. I go throttles up a little bit, and then up to the notch, and we're ready to go. We'll look down. I really wish that airplanes all just came with airspeed callouts on takeoff. Some of them have them, some of them don't. There's 80 knots because it's kind of hard to see the tape. There is rotate, and there's rotate, and up and away. And you can see the wind's blowing me slightly off the runway there. Holy moly, we're being blown off the runway. That's going to happen if you go and you want to look outside your airplane when you take off. Yeah, you can see there's the runway over there. Got blown all the way off that runway. That's a little bit better. Okay, out we go. Gear is up. And there's 2,000 feet. ATC says climb and maintain 7,000 feet. So we'll continue the climb. ATC says direct to beach. So there's 7,000 feet. After the gear goes up, you should turn on the yaw dampers. We're going to turn off the nose wheel light. And let's do our gentle turn direct to beach. We're also going to go from takeoff mode to climb mode. There's climb mode. Here is a little white triangle. You can see I'm climbing very, very steeply. We should have that flight director. There we go. Okay, at the F, that little white triangle flaps up. And we're a little bit off of our course. Here's 160. Now all of a sudden we can start climbing a little bit more. At this point we can go AP, IAS, it'll hold our speed. Autopilot's got us. This airplane is complex, so the sooner you can get yourself on the autopilot after takeoff, the better off you'll be. And it's going to climb us at about 165 knots, and out we go, and we are direct to beach. Come on down here. I'm going to go to progress. Come on up here, and oh my gosh, another checklist. So let's see, landing gear is up. Flaps are up. Power management is set to climb. Engine bleeds are on. Taxi and takeoff lights. The takeoff lights are on. The taxi lights are off. I'm going to go ahead and clear that. And our altimeters, this is such a short flight, our altimeters are set to. Let's clear that too and enjoy the departure. So you can see the landing lights are still on, and we're now direct to beach. And a nice view of Fort Lauderdale and the coastline. Looks like some of the big puffy clouds are already starting to develop up and down the Florida coast, getting ready for the afternoon showers that invariably happen. And this is all looking good here. I'm going to make the map a little bigger. I'm also going to come up here and do my heading hold. And that is... that just clicks the heading. It should click that over straight up at the top. I like to keep the heading bug always up at the top. The direction of travel. Passing 5,000 feet, that looks pretty good. We're just going to 7,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and turn on devices, let people use their electronic devices. Clear the airport. We're not going to be going above 10,000 feet, but we're going to go ahead and turn off the landing lights. There is our altitude horn, so it's almost time to level off. 7,000 feet, a short flight. Very good view of the water, the boats, and the sharks. Now, as we start getting close to the altitude, you can see it's flashing yellow for altitude hold. You're also going to see as we approach 7,000 feet, your speed's going to start to increase a little bit too. This is not exactly an auto throttle. So as we come on up here, now all of a sudden, there goes our speeds cranking up there. So we'll go ahead and we're going to put it into cruise mode now. And our speed's going to continue to kind of crank up there. Oh, look at this. Did you see the auto speed has now kicked it up to about 237 knots? And we are 118 miles from top of descent. And we're coming into some clouds. Can't see the water very well, but we made it. The thing about flight sim pilots is it's sort of like, you know, are you a really great flight sim pilot? You don't need autopilot and all that other stuff. Well, here's the deal. Especially if you're on VATSIM, this is a two-person cockpit, okay? There are two people sitting in here. I think I need to recalibrate my throttles a bit. There's two people here, one to work the radios, one to do all the other stuff so that the pilot flying can concentrate on pilot flying. Unless you're doing some sort of a shared cockpit thing, guess what? You're alone. And if you're really, really busy, you need your autopilot. So, you know, you're not questioning your skill as a pilot, a sim pilot, if you use the autopilot. Especially in VATSIM. Holy cats, especially in VATSIM. Speed's coming on up there to a good 237 knots. 7,000 feet. There's beach. There's the airport. It says 112 nautical miles to top of descent. We're 148 miles. I don't believe that, do you? Well, we didn't put in a runway. And also, if you look in the flight plan, well, there's also a discontinuity here that I haven't pulled out. Okay, so some things have changed a little bit. So removing discontinuities is a good thing. Let's go back to progress. Still 111 nautical miles to top of descent. Since we don't have a runway, we don't have altitudes, we're going to have to do this ourselves. So how do we do that? Well, we're at 7,000 feet. I said that we wanted to be at 2,000 feet to fly by the airport. We are 41 miles away from the airport. There is a little math that you can do. We're at 7,000 feet. We want to go down, so minus 2,000 feet is where we want to go. Times 3 divided by 1,000. That gives you an incredibly rough number of miles that you need to start your descent to be there. In this case, 15 miles. So we're going to cruise along. We're 39 miles out now, and we want to go to 2,000. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much to set your descent, especially in a flight like this where we don't have all the things that we would like to have. Next thing I'm going to do is come over here. I'm going to take the speed out of pink mode. We're going to go from auto mode to manual mode. Okay? And over here, we're going to go, and I'm just going to put this, I'm going to have this bugged right there. So we're right up against the barber pole, 200 and almost 250 knots. That's pretty good. If you're flying the longer airplane, it's a lot more sluggish than this one, okay? So you're probably not going quite as fast. It probably took you a little longer to get there. So there is a big difference between the shorter plane and the longer plane. This one is more of a sports car for you, okay? And how we doing here? Up 34 miles out. And there's beach. So maybe after beach, we'll go ahead and start our descent to 2,000 feet. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to do seatbelts for a second here. In case there is a passenger that had a little bit too much coffee. I have been that passenger, but only once. You learn your lesson the hard way. Back here in the cabin on this airplane is modeled very nicely. I think I would like to be a passenger on a short flight on these because 2x2 seating. There is, I guess, one of the longest flights in an ATR is a Silver Airways flight. It's 3 hours, like Tampa to Charlotte or something like that. I think that's a little long. That's just a little long. I like, commuter flight is an hour, 90 minutes at the most. Coffee. So there we go. We have a nice cruise here. We have about 5 minutes or so before we get the opportunity to start our descent. Now is going to be that dreaded time here on YouTube where, I mentioned, thank you for joining me on the flight today. I am relatively new here on YouTube, slowly trying to build up this channel. So if you liked what you saw, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do that too. If you really like what you're doing, you'll see that there is a link to Ko-fi for the buy me a cup of coffee kind of a thing. That's a really nice thing to do. If you like what you're seeing here, there's 2 other places to go. There is, of course, Twitch, link in the description. That's over there. We fly every day, Tuesday through Sunday. 1900 Zulu is our departure time. In the summertime, that's 3 o'clock Eastern time in the United States. In the mornings on flying days, I also do a little bit more of an advanced flight briefing for our first flight of the day that includes a little bit of a world weather report. And that is over on Patreon. I am trying to grow the Patreon channel too. I'm one of those people, just like an awful lot of other people, who did several versions, got laid off more than a few times, and this is quite frankly how I survive. So if you like what you see and want to support the channel, those are some of the ways to do it. And I will say a huge thank you for being my, silly little metaphor is thank you for being my jet fuel in the flight plan. And here is our turn. You can see some islands over there. Guess what? Those are our islands. So it's time to start thinking about our descent. How are we going to do this? Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set that 2,000 feet in here. So I'm going to dial in 2,000 feet, and there's 2,000 feet. I'm going to start reducing my speed a little bit. We're going a little bit fast here. We're right up against the barber pole. I don't want to exceed my speed, so I'm going to pull my power just a little bit. We are 18 miles out, so I want to get down to about 210 knots. So there's what you can see, the yellow arrow is going down, and there's my speed going down. I'm going to leave the bug there. Watch what happens when we get to 210 knots to that bug, okay? So we keep going down. There's 230. Let's pull the power a little more. We need to slow it down even more. There we go. There's 230. There's 220. We're 15 miles. This is when we needed to start our descent. Let's start it now. And to do that, we're going to start it by hitting the IAS button. So there's our descent. And did you see that the bug here reset itself to our current speed? Now I'm going to use the speed target dial, and I'm going to dial this down to 210 knots and pull the power. On our descent, you can see that there is a little pink square here. This is descent deviation, and it's telling us that we are a little on the high side. So I'm going to pull the power back even more. It's trying to figure out some stuff right now, especially since we don't have runways. So it's trying to figure that out, and it says we're too high. So now we're almost to thrust idle. Passengers need to get back in their seats. I'm going to turn on devices. Let's also do landing lights. We want to be seen. And everything looks good here. I'm going to start reducing my speed here. So I'm going to go down to about 200 now, because we're getting in close. That's 5 miles. There's 10 miles. There's the airport. It's time to start getting serious about landing. Come on over here. I'm going to go to performance. And our approach page is already selected. Nothing really to do here except note that your VAP speed is 100 knots. So we'll try to approach. I usually add a little bit to that, so we're going to call it 110. And if you look very carefully, you can see the runway. There's our airport. Holy cats, we're close. A little on the high side too, but we're okay. So remember, we're going to be landing going towards the west. So as we get close, there's 5 miles from the airport. I'm going to go in just a little bit closer. And now what we'll also do is I'm going to recenter my heading bug straight up, and let's go to heading mode. And now it says heading select. Hey, look at that. We're going down to 2,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and leave us at about 200 knots. So as we approach 2,000 feet, you better bring your props back up. Not that much. Oh, the little yellow thing's going way up fast. Let's also do a turn. So this turn is going to be 100. We already figured out what that is. And there's 2,000 feet. And now our speed's going way down. Oh my gosh, so many different things to do. Welcome to the world of small little airplanes like this, because everything happens at once. And so there's our turn out there. We're basically on the reciprocal of the runway. Speed's still coming down. I'm going to go ahead and continue my descent to 1,500 feet now. I'll hit the IAS descend button again, let it do some of my work for me. And I'm going to go and reduce my speed this time to 275 here on this descent. 175, I mean. 275 would be a little bit fast. Look out the window. Up, we're a beam of the airport. So this is just like what we learned in small airplane school, Cessna school. So we're on a downwind. Oh, look at this. Now we're starting to catch up with our descent deviation. So that means now at this point, the only deviant thing in this cockpit is my sense of humor. And now it's the goal is in a normal descent, you're going to try and keep that centered. And we're at 175. We're starting to slow down. I'm going to do flaps 1, and we're going to try and hold about 170. 175 coming around here. You can see the barber pole came down too because I did my flaps to flaps 1, or flaps 15, I should say. This is not an Airbus. We're doing relatively good here. Not so bad. You could also look over here and see our distance to the ZBV VOR is about 4.8 miles. Let's go out about 7 to 10 miles. And then go ahead and set our approach in. There's 1,500 feet. We're holding that pretty nicely. Everything is good to go up here. Landing gear is on. Taxi lights are off. I think you turn those on when the gear goes down. I think they automatically shut off, but I've kind of seen different people turn that on different times. Let's go ahead and just turn it on now. That way we don't forget something. You can see now as we're at 6 miles out, our descent deviation is now getting centered up. Now it's going down again. I think that indicates we're a little bit high. Let's do a 90-degree turn to the right. So 90 degrees. There's 90 degrees to the right. So I was basically going to 90 degrees from that turn. It's really easy to do 90-degree turns. And as we look around here, here's our turn. Watch the speed too. It can change like so many other things. Descent checklist. FWS recall is good. Landing elevation's groovy. FWS and navigation and performance is done pretty good. I did not set a decision height. Let's just go ahead and give ourselves 200 feet above the ground. That's ILS. We're not doing an ILS, but that's close enough. So that's good. Arrival briefing has been taken care of, but poorly done. Approach checklist. Seatbelts are on. Landing lights are on. Altimeters are set. Cabin altitude's groovy. Before landing checklist is the last thing. Let's look outside. Aha! There's the airport. And we've kind of overflown this, I think. We've kind of overflown this. So let's go ahead and turn back around. I generally find that it's easier to do left-hand pattern when you're in the left-hand seat. So we'll come on around here and see if we can't see the runway. Aha, there it's starting to show up there. So we did go over a little bit, but that's okay. Now then, let's go ahead. We're going to get awfully busy. I'm going to do landing gear. Gear's going down. You see it's going to cause drag. I'm going to bump my throttles up just a bit because I don't want to get too slow yet. Aha, there's the airport. Let's continue around a little bit more. And I want to continue my turn just a bit. See if we can't square this up just a bit. At this point in time in a flight like this, the autopilot starts to kind of get in the way. So let's do this real quickly. Cabin crew, landing gear, flaps, power management goes to takeoff. True speed, everything is good. Lights are great. That's about as good as this is going to get. Autopilot is going off. Captain's got the airplane. Gear is down 3 green. I'm going to slowly start reducing my speed and square this up just a little bit more. And I'm going to reduce that little bug, which doesn't mean much right now, but I want to get that down to about 110 for my airspeed. There's the runway. Time to start our turn in. Holy cats, it got busy fast. Continuing to reduce this down. And my speed is now down to 112. Good enough. I'm going to start pulling the throttle back a bit. And I'm looking over there in the corner. There's the runway. We appear to be a little high, so we can pull the power back a bit more. How about some more flaps? And I kind of am a little bit of a drunken sailor on this one. Then again, we're coming into Bimini, so maybe we're in good company. This continues to come down. Flaps are now full. Gear is down. And now it's primarily just a visual approach. If you can, look to see if you've got some PAPI lights. If we were on VATSIM now, we'd be talking to tower. Ooh, speed is now below that little bug. I don't want to get too slow. I don't want to get too fast either. So I'm just going to touch my throttles back up a touch to stay above that 110. That gives me 10 knots above the 100 knots. I don't see any PAPI lights, so this is all just visual, and this is one of the hardest things in flight sim, is if you're new, minimums, let's call it landing. If you're new, trying to judge your altitude and stuff, that's why I like, especially if you're new, set up ILSs, even if you want to be visual.
50, 40, 30, 20.
Landing a bit long. Reverse. This prop does have beta, so it will slow you down. My landing rate was 272, a little bit on the high side. Reversers are off. And gentle on the brakes here. There is our turn off. Landing lights. Strobes. Flaps up. Exit the runway. You can see the terminal is down here. My guess is traffic flow here as you exit this way, they would take us off going in the opposite direction. And look around over here. And that is a nice complete flight to a really great place that has palm trees and beaches. Who wouldn't want to be here right now? There is shutdown checklists at the moment you could use. I'm going to go ahead and feather propeller number, engine number 1, the prop on that. There is our terminal area. The doorway is on the left side in the back. So what we're going to do is kind of come around here. And there's our terminal area. The lines aren't set up particularly good for this, but we'll come around here. You can see there's a ground crew already ready to pull us in. In fact, there's somebody that wants to wave us in right now. Why don't we go ahead and take advantage of that? Might need a little bit more power on that one engine. I feathered a little too early. I lost the momentum. Well, engine number 2 is not going to do it. Okay, so I feathered my left engine a little bit too soon. Let's try this again. Aha. See, I feathered a little too soon. There we go. Now we can give it another shot. Well, that was embarrassing, but you can kind of see that you can recover these things. And there we go. And let's do parking brakes. Now we'll go ahead and feather engine 1. Let's turn on the gust lock. And all of this is kind of coming down. I also should have turned off that taxi light as we're coming in. You really can blind your ground crew with these, and that's not a good thing. And engine number 1 shuts down. Engine number 2 is going to go to feather. So you can see this engine is shutting down. Engine number 2 is spinning down a little bit too. And we do have a ground power card here, but we could also go into hotel mode. So you can see the ready light is still on. There's still hydraulic pressure. So we're going to turn on the prop brake. And you can see the prop brake is on. When the propellers stop spinning, we can go and turn off the beacon. Seat belts can go off. So that's good. Oh, turn off your probe heaters. That's a good thing to do too. So we're here and we're in hotel mode. Come over here. We'd like chocks. Main door, cargo door. You could also get a ground power unit, save a little power. Passengers are going to get off. Welcome to Bimini. It's beach time. How about that? You probably saw there was a couple of rough patches here. I always like to say when it comes to my YouTube videos on flight sim, I have a private pilot's license. So that means I can fly a Cessna 152, a 172, and a Cardinal. It does not make me an expert. And so I always like to say this is not about the right way versus the wrong way. This is Flight Simulator. The goal here is to show you what works for me. And if it works for me, then maybe, especially if you're getting started here in the exciting world of flight simulation and stuff, at that point in time, maybe it is something that'll work for you too. I hope that you had some fun. I hope that this helps you figure out which buttons to push on this amazing little airplane. I'm still super duper impressed by this airplane. There is so much to learn and lots of cool little airports to go and check out. Yeah, in the big jets, we like to go to the big international airports, but it's the small little airports like this that kind of extend the life of flight sim and make it so much more fun. And with the incredible scenery, it really is. It's like getting to go on a vacation without having to go through security. So I hope that this worked out. I also hope maybe you'll consider joining us over on Twitch. 1900 Zulu. It's the 757 spy flight over there. In the meantime, I hope you are having a really great time with these amazing airplanes. Thank you so much for watching, and I will look forward to seeing you in your pixel plane in the friendly simulated skies soon. As always, though, I like to stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.